The God Killer, it's Tokyo and I'm Godzilla. Hi guys, welcome back to episode 2. It's episode 2, baby. Episode 2, everybody. When I say epi, you say so too. Epi. Nice. Oh my god, is that episode 2 over there? No way. So, this is episode 2 of a mini-series here on the channel. I ask that you ignore my hair during this trying time. It's getting hacked off tomorrow, okay? This is gonna be fixed soon. Back in April, I made a video called What Video Game is Most Like the Weekend? Do you see me over there? I'm off there. It's tough to see me because I'm chilling in the little bottom corner over there. Seriously, what the hell was that framing? And so you might be thinking, what do The Weekend and video games have in common? Nothing, that's the whole point. I thought it would be fun to take something from one medium, in this case music, and then approximate its existence in the video game space. Kind of random, but I just thought it was a fun way to represent games. By kind of associating them with an artist, a movie, a book, either thematically, visually, or sonically, and most of the time, all at once. I don't want to only do this with music, but as of right now, that's kind of the realm we're staying in. I was thinking about what artists to do next, and I was like, maybe I should go through my vinyls. I have a really small collection around the house, but I was like, does anyone really care about some of these artists over here, and which ones will be fun for me to talk about? And then all of a sudden, Run the Jewels shows up in Invincible, and then again in the Far Cry 6 trailer. And basically everyone that I follow who reacts or looks into this stuff, from Kinda Funny to pretty much it, was commenting on Run the Jewels being there. So I'm like, yo, way more people know about Run the Jewels than I thought. Creators of popular shows or games are putting them in, and then other creators are reacting to them being there. So Run the Jewels feels perfect. And now, here we are. So what exactly are we going to do to figure this out? Well, first of all, we need to grab some of the most defining characteristics of Run the Jewels music, and we're not going to get too technical, we're not going to get ridiculously specific with it. We're just going to build kind of a profile that encompasses the type of music that they make, without being ridiculously difficult to compare it to a video game. Then I'm going to crawl into like a hole in the ground and just go through my mental list of every video game that I've played and try and tick off as many of these elements as I can, and then come back here and let you guys know what I came up with. Maybe a few fringe runner-ups, and then ultimately the game that I came up with that most fits the RTJ profile that we're about to create. So let's actually start doing that right now, starting with futuristic. This might be a weird way of describing music, because if the music is being made right now, how is it futuristic? It's just present. But the idea is that it sounds like it would be from the future. Especially their most recent project. RTJ4 feels like the production has gotten very spacey, alien, lasers blasting onto the planet. In the same way that we talked about in the Weekend video how synthwave music was basically the 80s trying to sound like the future, this feels somewhat like a present-day rap version of that same idea. Gritty. LP and especially Killer Mike have these really rough, underground style voices. They always seem like they're mad at the instrumental or something. They're not afraid of getting a little grittier with their subject matter either, and overall their delivery is just very rough and tough, and there's an edge to this music which is matched sonically with both the production and their style of rapping. Political. Oh no, don't make my video game political! Suck it up, dummy. People have this weird idea that somehow games that deal with actual politics or philosophy or morality aren't political, but once you shove a same-sex couple into a normal game, it is political. We're not gonna get into all that here because it's pretty ridiculous, but just to be clear, I do mean political in the sense that actually makes sense. Run the Jewels talks about police brutality, race, the government, gun control, and while whether you agree with them politically or not is on you, the fact that they are political is a staple, especially in their most recent projects. Aggressive. This might sound a little similar to Gritty, but this more encompasses their very loud and in-your-face music rather than its roughness. Gritty is like fixing up your car or chopping wood all day. Aggressive is like charging at that wood with an axe and screaming the whole time. I play this music when I want to get the blood pumping, you know, when I'm doing a workout or I'm just excited. I would never in a million years listen to them while I'm studying or something. I would never be able to focus for a second. Energetic. Again, this is a bit of a cousin to the last one, but I do think it distinguishes itself because aggressive is more confrontational and energetic is just, well, high energy. Run the Jewels always makes bombastic music, but not all of it feels like an FU to the government or talking about pressing issues or getting angry at things. A lot of it is just loud and fun. Middle ground. Run the Jewels isn't exactly underground. I'll be honest, I don't know if I know any real artists that are truly underground, but like I said, they've kind of popped up in some corners of pop culture recently. They're not a Drake or a J. Cole or a Kendrick by any means, but people who are fairly aware of the rap scene have at least heard of them. I might be showing my hand a little bit here. I'm not sure yet because I haven't sat down and thought about what game I'd pick yet, but I'd say a good example of this specific property in games is Metro. Metro is a game that you've probably heard of if you're in the game space, and games like Metro Exodus have done really well, but they're absolutely not in the top couple of tiers in terms of popular and well-recognized games. They're a little lower on that ladder. Passing the baton. I didn't really know how exactly to word this one, but it's essentially that idea of having more than one person as a presence on every track. Both LP and Killer Mike occupy space on these tracks, and that adds a dynamic edge to it. A lot of the times they also lead directly into what the other person is saying and share verses altogether, so in a game, if you maybe had multiple versions of yourself that you could switch between, or maybe multiple main characters themselves that you swap between, like the new Ratchet & Clank game, that would be kind of what we're looking for in this category. And finally, hard hitting. And I don't mean this in the same way that I mean aggressive, I mean more emotionally hard hitting. They have some great lines. One of my favorites from their newest record is one in response to how screwed up the world has gotten. Fuck y'all got another planet on stash. Talking about you act like this one's kind of disposable and you can just get rid of it and replace it with another. Really love that line. Another great line when they're talking about being a revolutionary and standing for something more than just yourself versus being there for the people close to you. I need a husband more than the world needs another martyr. And just overall some of their takes and points on so many hot button issues. It goes hand in hand a little bit with the political point and the aggressive point, but you can be both of those things without making some emotionally impactful messages, so I think this deserves to be mentioned on its own. Okay, so that's, how many is that? That's 8 things. Some of them go hand in hand, but they are distinct, I think. So I guess the only thing to do now is for me to crawl into an ethereal void and meditate until I can find something that fits all of this stuff in video game form. So I'm gonna go do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, baby, I'm back. I have a boring pick, a fun pick, and a few little shout-outs, so I guess let's just get into that. A combination of futuristic, middle ground, and energetic with just the tiniest dash of political landed me with Ghost Runner. A game that's definitely not breaking any sales records or anything, but it made a small splash when it came out last year. It takes place in a cyberpunk dystopia, and its music definitely feels like it's trying to emulate the future. And on top of that, it has some very exciting gameplay. Issue is, it doesn't have the edge of Run the Jewels. None of the traits revolving around the subject matter really apply here, since the story is really just supplemental and doesn't make any big hard-hitting statements, and the game is definitely far smoother than it is kind of rambunctious and loud. But I thought I'd put it on here because I love that game and it does match at least a little bit. Another game that doesn't match as well as my 2 real picks, but it still deserves a shout out, is BioShock Infinite. The reason for choosing Infinite over the older games mainly comes from the setting and vibe of the 2 worlds. They both actually take place in the past, but clearly these societies and technologies are way past our own, but Infinite can be a bit more crazy and has more energy than the original, which is much more focused on horror and making you feel unsettled. I prefer the original game, but for this comparison, Infinite makes way more sense. Political for sure, pretty energetic. I wouldn't say it felt like aggressive combat, but more lively than some. It's not quite gritty, I'd attribute that more to the original game, but it can be hard hitting, and because you're able to swap powers and use your powers and then a weapon immediately after, it has some of that pass the baton action we were talking about. It's missing some of the key things on this list, but it does nail a lot of the stuff I mentioned, so I think it also deserves a shout out. So now the games that I'd actually go with, and first my boring pick, and it's GTA 5. The story is very political, you're always crashing into things and swearing and torturing and murdering people, so it's definitely gritty. It can get pretty insane, so high energy is also a check. 3 main characters that you often seamlessly switch between, so that gives a similar dynamic. And there are definitely some poignant moments in the game. It's not really futuristic, I mean it has so many mods that kind of make it that way, but the base game isn't like that, and it's also not exactly a lesser known game, but really those, especially the latter, are somewhat less important than most of the other things on the list. Why is this a boring pick, you ask? Well, because it's GTA 5. Everyone knows GTA 5. It's one of the highest selling games of all time. It's obvious. It's just not fun, you know? I'm not trying to say the game is bad at all, but if we're gonna do this whole comparison thing, let's get fun with it. Talk about a game that people haven't heard of or forgot about, or makes you go, oh, you know, that's actually a good one, and that's just not GTA 5, you know? So with that said, my fun pick, and also I guess my overall pick, is gonna be Infamous 2. Infamous 2 was the first game I played on PlayStation, aside for about an hour of Uncharted 3 at my cousin's house, and before that the only games I played were things like Wii Sports or Sonic and Mario at the Olympic Games, so Infamous 2 is one of my first real gaming experiences ever. And looking back on it, holy crap, I wish we had more of this game. I know Second Son came out, but it definitely didn't have the same feeling. It was still a good game, but there's something primal and tough and almost dirty, but also cool and exciting about these first two games, and it's something I feel less and less with modern titles for sure. Infamous 2 was a gritty apocalypse story, not post-apocalypse. The apocalypse was happening as we spoke. It was one of the first series that actually did superheroes well, and it nailed your sweet-ass electric powers to create a game experience that felt exciting and explosive and just cool as hell. The set pieces and your powers were very loud, the city felt rough, and the comic-style story sections continued to amplify that dark and dirty world and story. The game also often tackled morality. The end choice is amazing, I think, although I wish it wasn't spelled out the way that it was. You have a dictatorship happening with armed militia abusing their power. We weren't in the future, but the setup of the whole conduit thing and the beast and all of this stuff felt like it did belong a bit in the future. Being able to switch up your powers a little bit doesn't quite match that baton pass that I was talking about, but it does end up in a similar realm. Second Son would actually be the one that would fit a lot more in that criteria. And finally, Infamous, especially 1 and 2, are talked about way less than games like the original Uncharted trilogy and a good handful of other games that came out during the time. It's not quite as lesser known as you maybe get with Run the Jewels, but it's not something that you immediately think of. Infamous 2 is a highly underrated game in my eyes, even though most people do really enjoy it. It's a little old now, but thinking about it made me want to go back and play through it again, and I'd also get ridiculously happy if we somehow got an HD remaster or a remake of the first two games. And I think a lot of the core parts of its identity match up pretty well with this short list that we created. But, you know, I'm just one guy who hasn't played every game on the planet, so I'm curious to know if you guys have anything that you think of that would match really well with RTJ. Did you like the picks I made? Do you think they were maybe a little bit forced? Do you like the idea of the series in general? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you're new. Check out all of the other stuff on my channel, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.